We're out here in the middle of the California desert with triple-digit temperatures with two very capable off-road pickup trucks. But that's why we're doing a 4x4 challenge head-to-head. Let's see how the 2015 Ram Rebel 1500 competes against the 2015 Toyota Tundra TRD Pro, and which one comes out on top. To begin our contest, we looked at measurable details like front and rear ground clearance on both of our competitors. Although the Rebel had an adjustable suspension, it was the Tundra TRD Pro that had more room underneath its front end, while the Ram's rear axle had more room underneath it. We also tried to quantify how flexible each of the two suspensions are by putting them both on a ramp travel stair-step climb, as well as walking both through a pair of man-made obstacle courses at our local off-road park. The two short trail sections allowed us to run each of the pickups up and down in low range to see how and when they would run out of traction or where they would get stuck. During these back-to-back runs, we found the Tundra TRD Pro had a slightly more flexible suspension, better able to twist and flex the front and rear axle in ways that kept the big BFG all-terrain tires on the ground more often. We also noted that each pickup had a slightly different low-range strategy. Although the Ram Rebel had a better crawl ratio, or a multiplied gear ratio when taking the first gear times the axle ring and pinion ratio times the transfer case low range ratio, the Tundra TRD Pro tried to make up that numerical difference with a smarter, more sensitive throttle feel. Where the Ram Rebel had an impressive 48.7 to 1 crawl ratio, the Tundra TRD Pro could only deliver a 37.808 to 1 number. But on most of our low-range trails, the Toyota seemed to feel lighter on its feet and more responsive to the small changes in driver inputs necessary when navigating a rock sluice or an uneven, hard-packed hill climb. Two tests in particular that the Ram Rebel did very well on included our fuel economy routes and sound testing. To calculate real-world MPG, we ran both trucks over the exact same roads at exactly the same time. One, a fairly straight high desert run, while the other was a slightly slower run through some mean windstorms, then climbing several thousand feet up a mountain 2-lane road. In both cases, the Ram Rebel's cylinder deactivation, higher axle gears, and 8-speed transmission gave it quite an advantage, bettering the Tundra TRD Pro by almost 10% on one leg and by more than 3% on the other. Likewise, we tested both pickups for how well they kept outside noises outside, measuring sound levels both at idle and at 70 miles an hour. Again, in both cases, the Ram Rebel outperformed the TRD Pro. In case you were wondering, our favorite head-to-head test and where we learned the most about each of these trucks had to be the sand dregs competition, where we ran each off-road half-ton side by side in a drag race on an open and lonely stretch of hot, flat sand to find out who had the smartest traction computers controlling the engine output and wheel speeds. We ran each truck with the traction controls on and off in both two-wheel and four-wheel drive, measuring their average finish line distances from one another. Interestingly, the Tundra TRD Pro dominated in each of the four settings with the exception of the two-wheel drive with the traction controls on, or what would be a normal or everyday setting. Everywhere else, the Ram Rebel fell behind a little and sometimes a lot. At the end of our 15 different empirical tests we conducted for our 2015 4x4 challenge, the results were very tight, with the Ram Rebel just inching ahead of the Tundra TRD Pro by 26 points out of more than 1,400. And if those 15 scored categories were the full extent of our test, we'd be telling you the Ram Rebel was our winner. But that's not the end of our test. We also added a section where 3 of our expert test drivers, all with varying degrees of off-road and pickup truck experience, could give their impressions in 5 different categories as they drove each of these competitors on just about every type of surface imaginable except snow. At the end of our judges' scoring, which accounted for almost 25% of our total number of points, it was clear the judges liked what they saw and experienced inside the Tundra TRD Pro. When adding the empirical points with the judges' totals, the Ram Rebel fell short by just 12 points, finishing with 1,913.5, while the winner of our 2015 4x4 challenge, the Tundra TRD Pro, finished with 1,925.5 points. This was by far one of the tightest contests, off-road or anywhere else, that we've ever been a part of, and we congratulate the Toyota engineers for building such a well-balanced off-roader. The 2015 Toyota Tundra TRD Pro, our 2015 4x4 Challenge winner.